The ultimate wholesaler.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Top Wholesaler Secrets, the 4-part series on how to go from 0 to 6 and 7 figures in as short as time as possible with wholesale real estate. What's up, guys? This is your main man, Chris Enze, aka
The ultimate wholesaler.
If you're seeing this video, that means that you're looking to do your first or next wholesale deals within the next 30 to 90 days. Right? All right. Now, if that's true, you're definitely in the right place. What's up, guys? We're back here in video number 3 of the Top Wholesaler Secrets, and here we're going to review the role of the buyer manager. Now, if you haven't seen video number 1 and video number 2, where we covered the acquisition manager role and the seller manager role, I highly suggest that you go back and watch those videos right now. If not, this video might not make as much sense because it's built from many of the same concepts that we discussed in those videos. So before we dig in on the buyer manager role, let's quickly recap what we've learned so far. So the acquisition manager starts doing their marketing and gets into contact with a potential seller. Then they will quickly gauge that seller's motivation and also set up the initial appointment for the seller manager. Once that happens, the seller manager will take over and start to doing their research on the property. They're going to quickly re-gauge the seller's motivation, trying to dive in a little bit deeper than the acquisition manager did. Then they'll confirm the appointment and go on the appointment. After that, they're going to submit an offer or negotiate or continue to follow up until they get a signed contract from that seller. Once the seller manager has done this, the seller manager will then send the agreement over to the buyer manager and also to the closing manager. Now, we're going to discuss the closing manager's role in the next video, which will be the last video of this series, but for now, we're going to focus on the buyer manager. So the buyer manager's primary function is to attract an end buyer, typically a rehabber or a landlord, and get a signed purchase and sale agreement from them at a higher price than what we agreed to pay the seller. As wholesalers, we're looking for an end buyer to purchase the property or our rights to purchase the property. Now, this all depends on how we plan to close the property, because we're going to use the funds of the end buyer to close our deals. This is how we close a property without using our own cash or credit. Now, we find our buyers by marketing for buyers, doing many of the same types of functions that the acquisition manager did when they were searching for sellers. Once we find them, we will then negotiate with the end buyers using many of the same types of tactics that the seller manager did when they were negotiating with their sellers. So in a sense, the buyer manager employs many of the same skill sets that the acquisition manager does and also that the seller manager does. Are you seeing how the skills kind of build on top of each other? So just like the acquisition manager and the seller manager were looking for a specific type of seller, remember? What kind of seller are we looking for? Say it with me. Right, a motivated seller. Again, one more time. We're looking for a motivated seller. One more time for clarity. A motivated seller. Okay, cool. The buyer manager is looking for a specific type of buyer, and that is a cash buyer. Say it again with me. A cash buyer. One more time for clarity. A cash buyer. And that's right, a cash buyer. We're looking for people that have the cash on hand to purchase the property fast, all cash. We are not looking for first-time home buyers that will be using a bank loan to purchase the property so that they can actually live in it, or any type of traditional bank financing style buyer. Now, to be honest, you can close these types of deals, but they can be a big pain in the rear and can take a very long time to close. Much longer than we typically have to close a wholesale deal. Like we mentioned before, typically our buyers will be a rehabber that focuses on fixing and flipping, or a landlord that buys and holds. Now, rehabbers are the people that you've seen on those house flipping shows on channels like HGTV and maybe TLC. This is the thing about rehabbers. They make their money by finding properties that need a lot of work and buying them for a discounted price, and then they sell them for a huge profit. Now, these buyers make huge lump sums of cash every time they sell a property, and since they only make money when they sell a property, they are typically always on the lookout for their next deal. Rehabbers, again, make big lump sums of cash, ranging anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 on the low end, and anywhere from $100,000 to $400,000 per deal on the high end. Alright, so the next type of buyer that we're looking for is going to be a landlord, aka a buy and hold investor. Now, landlords are some of the best buyers because they can typically pay a little bit more money than your average rehabber. The landlord buyer makes their money by holding the property and collecting the profits from the rental payments and also from the property appreciating while they hold it. Landlords typically have a lot of cash and are always on the lookout for their next cash flowing acquisition. So now that we know who we're looking for, the next step is to figure out how to contact them and get them to beg us to buy our deals. So just like the acquisition manager used Craigslist to find sellers, one of the best ways to get the word out about your property is actually to put it onto Craigslist in the for sale by owner section. Remember from video 2 when we discussed that as investors, we have an ownership stake in the property as opposed to an agent that is just working for a seller or a buyer or both. And since we have that equitable interest, aka a ownership stake in the property, and also we use an agreement that states that we can actually market the property, we can go ahead and post that property as a for sale by owner legally on sites like Craigslist.com. Now once we post a property for sale, we will start to get replies from interested buyers. Once those replies start coming in, the buyer manager will have to go ahead and gauge the interest level of the buyer. The buyer manager will also make sure that the end buyer is a cash buyer. Now this is very, very important. It's because just like the acquisition and seller manager had to do to find the seller's motivation, the buyer manager is screening out potential time wasters, looking for only those that are ready to take action and close the deal with cash. Now once we've had the chance to speak with the buyer and set up a time for the buyer to go out and take a look at the property, and they like it, we're going to negotiate a purchase price. Remember, we're looking for a price that is higher than what we agreed to pay the seller, typically anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 or more if possible. Now once we agree to a price, the next step is to get an agreement in writing and then send that agreement over to our closing manager. So now it's just time to recap. So once the acquisition manager has contacted the seller, gauged the seller's motivation, and has set up the initial appointment for the seller manager will take over and then research the property, confirm the appointment, quickly re-gauge the seller motivation, go on that appointment and submit an offer and or negotiate or follow up until the contract is signed. Once the seller manager has done this, the seller manager will then send the agreement over to the buyer manager and also to the closing manager. Once the buyer manager has the agreement, they're going to start to market the property at a higher price than what we've agreed to with the seller. Once we have a buyer that is ready to move forward and we get a signed contract, an agreement from the buyer, we're going to send the documents over to our closing manager. And that's it. Now if you're looking for more in-depth information on the wholesale process and also want to start working on your own deals that you can close within the next 30 or 90 days, I would love to get on a call and set up a time for us to talk about your lead acquisition system and personal customized blueprint to put you on the fast track to closing your first deals ASAP.
The ultimate